really get to hear this. Today I'm introducing our speaker, Larry Welch. He's going to be talking about his slot car collection that he has, and which is also some of it is on display in the museum as a temporary exhibit. He grew up in South Texas, and they moved to Mesquite in 1969. He and his father, they shared a love of cars, and he became interested in slot cars when he was young. Thanks to a friend, and then as a teenager he purchased his first set, and it kind of took off from there. He also has his own shop and has collected over 1,900 cars and has 7 tracks. Track layouts. I also want to thank this month's sponsors, our Howard Davis and Pat Bowman. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Larry.
All right. Thank you, Susan, and everybody that's here. We're having a good time today. I was approached by John, who lives down the street from me. Back in the summer, he was walking one day, and he saw that, come on in. You're just going to look? John stopped one day and saw what I was doing, and he goes, you know, I'm a member of the museum up here. Would you like to put your slot cars on display? And I said, oh, that'd be cool. So it was probably January before Susan called me because they had some other displays. And so we talked, and then I came up and talked to her and put some stuff together and got it up here in the little display cases over here. So it's been quite a fun task putting that stuff together. I've got my wife and my granddaughter here today. We keep her for 2 or 3 days a week while the parents work, and we have a good time with her. And she actually has her own little slot car that I built her, and it's a unicorn with sparkles on it and diamonds. So she has a good time racing it around on the track. Here, I'll let y'all look at it. But we fixed it up and blinged it up for her. Slot cars were developed way back, and it got real popular probably in the 60s, and it really took a boom. But what happened is the guy with all the money got all the good cars, and he was the one that won all the races. And then everybody else was like, okay, I can't beat this guy, so I'm going to start playing softball, or I'm going to play golf or something else. So it was kind of a roller coaster ride, if you will, and it even happens that way today. It seems like there's guys that have a good trigger finger to a brain, and they can really race these cars around the tracks. Now, we make them to where they will fly off the track, and here is a piece of track that it has a slot in it, or a groove, if you will, and it has 2 metal rails that the electricity goes through. And then you can see, let me grab my pointer here. You can see right here that those are the contacts on both sides and the little motor and the magnets. And this is a pretty popular type car. It's a Tyco, made probably back in the late 80s, early 90s. I love these kind because I can work on them, tear them all apart. There's 38 pieces in there, and somebody had to put them together in the beginning, and I can tear them apart and put them back together. But the cars just ride in the slot with the little guide pin, and you can see this one has quite the magnets on it. And the magnets at the back, right there's one, right there's one, they hover over those steel rails and keep the car planted down to the track. So there's 2 kinds of cars, the magnet cars and the non-magnet cars. And non-magnet cars were developed way back when they first started. This is one, I'll tell you all about this in a minute. This is a 63 Corvette Stingray, non-magnetized. If I put it on the track and turn it upside down, it'd just fall off of it. But I'll tell you about these 2 cars here in a little bit. I got a good story on those, I'll tell you. So let me go. See if we can go through the next one, make sure I'm punching. So you can see the guide pin right here that's on all cars. They're either metal, they make them out of steel or aluminum, they make them out of plastic. Of course, plastic you can see can break. The aluminum ones break. I lost a big race one time because my guide pin broke off. So I started putting steel in all of them after that, and it tends to stay together a little bit better. You can see this is one of the older cars made back in the 60s, and it does not have any magnet traction, if you want to call it that way. This is what they call a T-jet. These are very popular all over the United States and either other countries. The older guys, and I say, you know, I'm 65, so that group that's done this, they love to take these cars and modify them. So if I took this car just like it is and ran it around my 70-foot track, it would probably make maybe 2 laps in a minute. And we can modify them where we can get almost 10 to 12 laps a minute. They really do zip around the track. It costs money to do that. I've got one right here. It's been fully modified. It won some national events. I bought it on eBay, and it's probably worth $175. I didn't pay that for it, Debbie. But I think I give $65 for it. But I know all the tricks now, how to build them. And it's just got weights on the front and special tires and special gears and better motor and better magnets and all this stuff. And it sits way low down, so it really races really good. So I'm more of a magnet type car person. I like the cars with the magnets on them. Here's some of the ones, the early ones made back in the 60s. They average $45 to $60 a piece now when you find them. Quite expensive. And just because they're old, they're not making them anymore. This country's been out of business since 1978. So, but they're still out there. They made thousands of them, and there's thousands of them in the trash, I imagine. You know, the boy moves off to college, the parents clean out his room, throw all his toys away. And the bad thing about slot cars is, you know, the little tracks you used to piece together and you put them under your bed if you weren't playing. Those things would get carpet hairs on them or dog hairs and human hairs, and then they wouldn't work, or you would lose a pickup shoe. And the parents didn't know how to put them back together. There wasn't eBay to buy parts back there. And so they just got thrown away. And it's just crazy how much probably got thrown away. These cars sold for $2.35 a piece when they were brand new. And now they're worth, you know, like I said, up to the $60 range or even higher now. So toys never go down in their value. Here's one of the little super modified cars with the wing. Hello, Gene, come on in. Y'all come on in, you ain't missed much. Now I've got 10 or 12 of these, and they're quite rare, but we have modified them up and race them all the time, and it's pretty neat to see the little chrome wing reflecting light as it's going around the tracks and all this type of stuff, so it's quite neat to see it. I didn't bring any of those because they're hard to put in the box with all the wings and stuff on them, but just a kind of a reference to what one looks like. Here's one of the new expensive cars, and I've got one like it in a different color, and they're about $125. Now, I got this one given to me for Christmas this year, so one of my buddies loves me, but it's got all fancy stuff on it. I'll pass it around, everybody can kind of look at it. It has a lightweight little plastic body, so they're really, they'll zoom around the track. They'll probably make 25 laps a minute. I mean, they're fast. They're just zip, 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 zip. I got a video I'm going to show y'all here at the end where they're running around the track. That company is called Viper, and they're up in Utah. They've been in business about 7 years. They really make a good product, you know, as far as slot cars go. Here's a 57 Chevy. A lot of you may be familiar with 57 Chevys. These are pretty neat. I better quit walking in front of the thing. Let me show you. I actually have one right here. It's pretty neat. Got a little bit different chassis on it. And then I've taken the same car and modified it where I cut all the pieces off of it. So you can see the same car. One's just to look at, one's to race. So it's kind of neat to see how you can take them and change them up and make them faster and make them look like hot rods, if you will, stuff like that. Here's one of the new cars. This just came out a few years ago, and they're really low down. It's really good detail of what the real race cars look like over in Europe and places like that. Even got the little driver's head right there, which is kind of neat. I actually have one of those, but I don't think I brought it today. No, but I've got some more here to show you. But these, when they came out, they were $24.95. And now they're $89.95. But they're really good cars, and they just will fly around the track. It's amazing. And we're always talking about money, my group of guys that come over. Here's one of the newer cars. This company, they sell these cars at Hobby Lobby. Now, this particular Indy-looking car is kind of out of production now, but this company's called Auto World. And they're up in Pennsylvania, and they make a lot of cars now, and they're probably just the more reasonable. These are $19, and they run pretty good. You have to do a little work, a little tweaking on them to make them work right. But they're pretty neat. The only thing I don't like about them is when you hit the wall or something, it breaks the front wing off. And then you have to start getting the super glue out and fixing stuff again. But they're very fast, and they're fun. I know how to modify them and fix them up. Here's one of the older Indy cars, and they tried to mimic them off of, this car ran in Indianapolis back in the 80s. Michael Andretti, if you remember that name, ran this Craco car. Now, they have to fatten them up a little bit to get them to fit under those chassis. And what we call a chassis is just merely what it is. It's all the components that makes it work. And either the bodies will snap on it, or they'll have little screws that hold the bodies on there. This one I just built the other night. It's quite fast. It is just a rocket. And it gets upwards to 250 degrees when it's running. I got a little thermometer we'll put on it, a little laser, and it'll tell me if it's getting too hot. But we usually only run it about 4 or 5 laps just to show people how fast they'll go, but it generates some heat, let me tell you. They even make motorcycles. I think my motorcycles are in the display case. And you think, motorcycles, how does that work? Well, they have 2 little back tires. So it's kind of a tri-type setup. But when I was talking about the chassis earlier, there's like 38, 30, 40 parts in those things, and you can take it completely apart. And this one, I have level 52 traction magnets. That may not mean much, but that's the most powerful magnets they got. So you can almost hold it wide open around my track. It'll just fly. It will go upwards to 1,050 miles an hour. So slot cars are the fastest thing on earth, technically. So I have the record on my track right now. We start out with cars that would run 12 seconds around my 70-foot track, and I'll show you a picture every minute. And the other day I did a 2.8 second lap. So that is the record on that track. And this track I have, it was built in California, it went to Chicago, it went to Des Moines, it went to Kansas City, back to Chicago, to Waxahachie, and then my house. And it's an 8-lane track. We think it's the only one in the country. Thanks to my lovely wife, I was able to purchase it about 6 years ago. And if you built one today, they'd be about $30,000. And I lucked out and paid $1,800 for this one, and the guy delivered it to my house. So I did all right. Elvis Presley even had slot cars. His wife Priscilla back in the day bought him a little box, and I have one similar to this at the house, and you can see the cars. Now these are 1/32 and 1/24 scale, about this size. So it's a little bit bigger, so they take up more space, right? Where I can put 2 or 3 tracks in here, somebody like this could only do 1. So He got really interested in this and even had a room built onto the side of Graceland, if you've ever been there. It's right, the big room right at the end of the pool. And he had a big slot car track in the place. And there's the only known picture of the slot car track right there in his car. I got these off the internet. This is the only picture. And rumor has it that all of his buddies, you know, the Memphis Mafia, like they call it, were racing. And they got to arguing who won. And Elvis got mad, and the next day it was gone. Some people say it went to the YMCA. Other people said it got destroyed. Some people say it's in storage somewhere, but they won't tell you. But what I think what's interesting is me and Debbie went a few years ago to Graceland, and I found this picture on the internet, and lo and behold, there's Elvis's controller, right? You see it? And I found one on the internet just like his. Now this spring I'm going to have to work on, but these are rare. I'll let you just kind of look at it. But this is what Elvis used back in the day. Isn't that neat? It actually works too. I just need to tighten the spring.
What does it control?
It controls the electricity to the car. And I'll show you some more on that in just a minute. So you're kind of like a throttle. You use your finger like a throttle on the gas pedal. You're just creating electricity power to it. I have 5 of those now. All the other ones are black. That's the only red one I've ever seen. And I don't think it's that one because they really keep all of Elvis's stuff together. But I thought it was interesting. Even the Beatles played with slot cars. So I found these pictures, and a lot of times I've heard of these rock and roll people like to have this stuff in their hotel rooms when they're not playing and doing stuff. And they'll race cars. I got to run on a track a few years ago, and they said Aerosmith had ran on this particular track. And the guy had it where he could crate it up. It was 16 foot long by 5.5 foot. It went on wheels. He'd roll it in the hotel, set it up for them, and they would sit there and play with it all day long. So you can see the Beatles. Of course, they're on the 1/32 scale car, which is about that size. Even Batman, if you remember the old Batman series back in the 60s, there's Adam West and there's his aunt. So this was on one of the shows. At the end of the show, they ran it for 2 or 3 minutes. And you can see the Butler's running a car, and there's one over here, and there's one back here, but they talk about, now this is a big 1/32 scale racetrack, and you can see that table's about 20 foot long by about 8 foot wide maybe. Takes up a lot of space. But it was interesting that the popularity was where they even put it on a TV show back in the day. Here's some of the controllers we have nowadays. Instead of that thumb type controller, we have these massive things that have brakes on them and sensitivity switches and fuses and little bitty lights when it's hooked up the right way. Now, I lucked out and bought this along with 6 others for 50 bucks. The lady said they weren't working. Her husband had passed away. I bought them on eBay legitimately, took them and got all 6 of them working. Now, this would retail for about $380, $400. So you can see the trigger. All of it's high dollar, high temperature thing. And about 4 years ago, the company that made these burnt to the ground. The guys took the insurance money and left, and they don't make them anymore. I do have one gentleman I know that can work on them. There's a lot of soldering, and you really can't hurt it unless you ran over it with a truck. And
The lights are for it.
when you put the car on the track and the electricity's hooked up, the light will come on green if everything's in good shape. So this one I like running better than most of. I have like 90 controllers, probably a lot of people have given them to me. But it just simply use your finger to, where this one you had to use your thumb, and your thumb's not as fast as your finger. Otherwise I'd have a gun that you would shoot with your thumb, right? Because everybody wants to go faster. So I usually use what my little brother used to say, the ugly finger, because it's faster than your trigger finger actually. So we end up racing and stuff like that. So it's, and I've got friends that have these, And they even have digital readouts that tell them the voltage, and they're just way expensive. All this heat sink stuff here takes the heat out where it want, and I don't really know all about it except it just really works. So for really fast cars, I can pull the sensitivity up, turn the brakes off. For really slow cars, that I can turn the sensitivity down to where it's not as touchy. So basically what you're doing is when you hit this and the wiper goes across, you're feeding it electricity, a little bit more of them, and wide open. So you'll see this here when I show the video in a minute. Here's one of the track layouts, and it's made with just plastic track like you gave your kids for Christmas, like we were talking about earlier, and just snaps together. Now my big track that you'll see here in a minute, it's all hand routed, one big piece, so you don't have all this clickety where the joints are. I've got this little bleacher, Rainy's calling. Did you see her? No problem. This little bleacher set, these things are $150 on eBay. They were made in the 60s. They're quite rare. And I had 2 of them give to me by a gentleman one time. One of them I have has a bunch of little characters glued to it and everything. Well, in fact, it's in the display out there. You can see it. Here's one of the books. This book catalog, it's about this thick. It was written by a gentleman up in New York. He's called Mr. Aurora. His name is Bob Beers. And I got to actually meet Bob. And his favorite car was one of the Porsches like this. And he actually autographed it right here on the back for me. So I got to meet Bob Beers with his favorite kind of car a few years ago. He's a cantankerous old gentleman, but he has a museum with nothing but Aurora slot cars in it. And he wrote this book so you can be a collector. He shows you all the colors and all the types. And I mean, it's 200 or 300 pages. Of course, I got him to autograph my copy of this too. So here's a big track that somebody's put together. And you can see that they color the lanes. So if you're running on a red lane, you'll put a little red sticker on the hood of your car. And if you fly out the track, the guy that's picking it up knows which lane to put it back in. So you can imagine what my track's like with 8 lanes. It takes quite a feat. Here's another little home track that we built years ago and ran on it for a while. Another type layout. Excuse me. And then there's my big track right there. So this is 9 feet wide by about 19 foot long, and it's 8 lanes. It doesn't do it justice. And I've got little trees on it, like this little area right here is Dinosaur Valley for her. There's all kinds of dinosaurs. And I've got some little tent campers right there. Even got Big Tex standing, there he is right there, see Big Tex. So a lot of stuff is on it. We just got trucks and cars, and I got a little area right here that looks like a lake. We got a guy fishing out in the lake.
What scale is that?
This is HO. HO means half of O scale. So O scale was about like this, so HO was half of that. That's how they come up with it. So it's HO, O scale, 1/32nd, 1/25th, 1/24th scale. There's not much difference between 1/24th and 1/25th, just a little bit. Now, I've got a lot of cars. So the funny story is, Debbie come up to me one time, she goes, you know what? You've been telling people you got 400 or 500 cars for years, and I think you're lying. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll just go out in my shop. So this was about 5 years ago. And I disappeared for about 12 hours. She come out there and said, you going to go to church in the morning? I said, I'm still out here. And it took me that long to set all the cars out of my boxes on the track. And then it took me a couple hours to count them, right? So I'd count and lose track. So then I started putting a little piece of paper every 100 cars, you know. And so I came in the house later on. She goes, okay, were you lying to all these people? I said, nope. How many did you have? And I had it wrote on a piece of paper, 1,787 cars right there. I didn't tell them I had that many. I didn't think I had that many. Now, I'll be honest, not everybody has a chassis under it. Every HO car made and sold had a chassis under it. But there's thousands of bodies with no chassis. We don't know where all the chassis have gone sometime, but anyway, it happens. But there's 18-wheelers. Now, let me make a little clarification. Everything you see in the infield is either a Hot Wheels or a Matchbox car. It's not a slot car. Only the cars on the track are slot cars. And I think I put some of my trophies back there, maybe in the back. I can't remember. I don't know if you can see it. There's the Goodyear blimp. It's got a little piece of wire sticking up so it's hanging. Now I got a big Goodyear blimp now. Now this is at our old house. You can see my monitors right here and up here that have a computer lapping system on there. It gives you real-time speed, and it counts the laps every time it comes over the read area. If I can go back a spot, it's still hard to see. Right in here, I have these little bitty, they're called reeds, and it looks like a glass bulb, and it has two little pieces of metal inside, side by side. And when the cars come over it, the magnet causes those reeds to collapse or touch each other, right? Which counts a lap. Goes to the computer and counts a lap and everything. And I broke those things. When we lived in Forney, the guy next door to me sold DeLorean cars. And in the gas tank, they have reed switches. Where the gas comes up, the float has a magnet on it. So it will indicate that reed and it'll tell you how full. So one day he brought me a whole bunch of them. And I said, thank you. Man, this is really cool. I got a bunch of these reed switches now. So anyway, a lot of cars. Here's another track I have. Now, I built this one in year 2000. So this thing is 23 years old. This was taken about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But me and my dad built this track out of wood that I went and got to Home Depot, and I used my Christmas gift card money to buy all this. And we actually routed the edges, and I've got these little ferrules on the end. This is 16 foot long by 4 foot wide. So just 2 big pieces of plywood. That's the national event scale that they want you to use. And this is all plastic track, just like this. There's 120 of these 15-inch pieces on that, plus the curves. And those things are about $4 a piece. And I had a guy donate me a bunch, and I traded some Hot Wheels for some, and somebody else give me some. And then I ran out and had to use some brown track and tried to paint them black. That didn't work, but here's some more brown track I had to use. But we finally got it built. And the guys love racing on this because it's a lot of fun. It's very fast, just fume, 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 fume. We have a good time with it. This is my little, what I call my pit bench. It's where I work on my stuff. And Tessa, she helped me build this table one day, her and my grandson. And I got them to sign their name on the side of it, and we dated it. But all of this is tools. You can see my Dremel tools right here, and I'll tell you about Dremel tools here in a little bit. Got 4 or 5 of those. I've got a soldering iron over here. I've got a little dyno that I can put the cars on, and they run and turn this little wheel. Tell you how much power is coming out of it. And I've got paint thinner, and I've got oils and lighter fluid and cleaning and alcohol. Just anything I can use to work on slot cars is right here. And if you go around to anybody's house, all the guys have something like this. It might be on a desk. Now, I have a desk sitting right next to it on the left that almost looks like that too, because I can sit down or stand up. And if you're testing the cars, sit down and get up and walk over and test and come back and say, after a while, the thighs start hurting. So if I stand up and work on them, it's easier to move back and forth. This is my shop. You can see there's the pit table, there's my desk. I have all of those boxes you should see that look like these are full of cars back here. There's 14 of them. And Debbie helped me. She'd find a box at Goodwill for $5. She'd bring it home. I'd throw it in the swimming pool and let it soak for 2 or 3 days, wash it out at the car wash, and we'd use it for slot car boxes because they're kind of like fishing lures, right, in a way. So the boxes that you use for fishing works really good for carrying your cars around. Our daughter, which is now, how old is Rainey? Almost 40. She was about 7 or 8. We were at the lake one day, and she ran up to me. Now, I've been doing this for 40 years. She ran up to me and said, Daddy, 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 those guys down there at the dock have slot car boxes, and they're using them for fishing. So it tells you how far, what she knew about that stuff. I got my refrigerator and my microwave and the TV's up here where we can run old tapes. And I got some tables we bought at the flea market so the guys can come in and set their boxes down and have at it. The shop is well insulated. It's got a lot of lights in it, so it's just a terrific 2,200 square foot, so it's quite a big place. So I have the big track in the front, then I have 3 tracks at the back, and then I have 2 drag strips. I actually have a drag strip. It's not hooked up yet, but I mean, it's like you can run pro stuff on it. It's got a little Christmas tree, and it'll down, and the computer tells you how fast you got, and these guys build these cars that are just, you can't even see them. I mean, they go, shoo, and it's over with, you know, boom, it's gone. And then I have another track that I'm working on. And then I have another buddy of mine that has a 4x8 track on a rolling cart, if you will. He wants to bring it over where we can play with it sometime. So we're going to have a full shop. If I can get 10 tracks, they'll put me in the Guinness World Book of Records as having the biggest slot car shop in the whole United States. And I'm almost there, 7 tracks. So we're going to try to get in the Guinness. The other thing we want to try to do, and I know we're getting old, we want to try to run the 24-hour, as many laps as you can get in 24 hours. We figured the other day we got to run 20 laps a minute for 24 hours to get the record. So it's going to take like 10 or 12 of us, some of us sleeping, some of us racing. If the car breaks, you're going to have to go faster than that, right? If we have to work on it. So we're going to see that that record hadn't been broken in many, many years, maybe 30 or 40 years. So I don't know how much, we're getting older now where a lot of us maybe can't stay up that late anymore. Debbie got tickled at me. She goes, aren't your slot car buddies going to come over and help you move your tracks from Forney to Greenville? And I got to thinking, I'm 65 and they're all older than me. So no, we had to do something else, you know, so. And that's my color, Optic Yellow, which is like a tennis ball, right? Now, if you go by the paint at Home Depot, it's called Key Lime, but I like Optic Yellow. I think it sounds better. So I took a bunch of the cars, and I had duplicates of, and I painted them all that color because I can see it when it's running around that track. One of my buddies has orange, another one has white, and another one has blue, the 4 guys that I really race with. So I chose this, and I thought it looked pretty neat. Did I bring one that was painted? I didn't even bring one that's painted Optic Yellow. Wow. I was trying to think everything to bring, and I left some stuff, but anyway. So this is basically our class of cars. We know that this is a Roadrunner, this is a Charger, and that's a van, there's a pickup truck, and we have different tires on the back. So we'll line our classes all up and we'll race them. And whether we do 1 lap, kind of like a drag race around the track, if we got enough people, what they call corner marshal, then we'll run timed heats and actually race for championship points. Let's see if this will go. All right, so here, if I can get this to start, Susan, can you run the mouse? I think if you go right down here and hover over that, I think you can hit the little arrow. I thought I had it where it would start automatically. So this is back in January from my birthday. It won't do it. Oh, there it goes. It may lag a little bit. But we had 22 guys there racing, 8 at a time. you can see the cars coming around. Now again, it's lagging a little bit. Like I said, we got little colored dots on each one of the cars so you know which lane to put it back in. This is kind of a mid-range speed car, I guess. They run pretty good. The computer, I printed these off or put it over as a real, it's like a gaming computer, so it doesn't lag. And what's fun is when the cars come off the track, they fly up into these other cars and they have trouble finding them, which makes it funner. There's those little curved benches that I told you about. One of them's in the display case out here. But this is a lot of stuff, a lot of fun. We had guys from Arkansas there come down from Little Rock to race with us. They're supposed to come back May the 20th at my house on a Saturday. We're going to have another big race, so if y'all want to drive out and just look for a few minutes and watch us race, you're welcome to it. This was a 1-hour enduro race. Nobody had ever done that. So we had 2-man teams, and we raced for 1 hour nonstop. And when you get, my finger's getting tired. Somebody come, my buddy'd come over and he'd take over with me, and then I was in charge of marshaling. So if you weren't racing, you had to, what we call track marshal, where you put the cars back in the track if they come off. So it's a lot of fun. Me and Tessie will sit out there some nights for 2 or 3 hours. And when she was little, I had the controller. I had her a little controller, right? So if you go all the way down, the car going to fly off the track, right? So I put a rubber band around the bottom where it built this up where she could only go about 1/4 of the way. So I handed it to her. She's sitting on the stool. She probably wasn't 3 years old. And she looked at the rubber band. She looked up at me. She looked at the rubber band. And she was looking at me like, what is this? I can't go fast. Next thing I know, she's over there pulling the rubber band off. But I built her some cars now that don't fly off the track, and she has a lot of fun with them. I was showing them earlier. You got some that are quite fun, that little lights and the siren come on. Now the last year this company made cars was 1980. So this thing is what, 43 years old? Some of my cars are 60 years old, and we're still playing with them. Because you have to work on them all the time. The other one's the fire truck, which is hard to find nowadays. Got the little bell. This one actually runs pretty good. The front bumper's broke, but I think I give $25 for this, and they're like $100 now on eBay. So this car is pretty neat. If any of y'all have ever watched NASCAR, y'all know who Richard Petty is, probably, right? The big NASCAR racer. This is a body patterned after one of his cars. And on the bottom down here, I have Elvis wrote on it, so I remember. So this car had its picture made on Elvis's big wrought iron gates. It's been to Pikes Peak. It's been to Mount Rushmore. It's been to Crazy Horse. It's been to the St. Louis Arch. It's been to Chicago. It's been to the top of what used to be the Sears. So our buddies, when they travel with a slot car in their pocket, and they'll set it up somewhere and take a picture. And they'll email it to us. So I'm over there at Elvis Presley's place. Of course, the magnet helps because it just sticks on the iron gate. David said, what you doing? I said, I got to send a picture. So she's up there on Pikes Peak at the top, holding the car like this, and I'm taking a picture. So this car it's been everywhere, man. It's been quite fun with this. Now, these two little cars, so my profession was I worked for the highway department for 30-something years. And then I started teaching asphalt classes around the state to the cities and the counties and help them. Greenville would never call me. But anyway, they need help. So I teach the highway department guys how to put asphalt on the highways correctly. And I know how to do all that. when COVID come along, that ended my career being able to talk to people. It's coming back a little bit. But anyway, I changed jobs. And now I'm doing PowerPoint presentations about construction, how to do concrete and soils and asphalt. Anyway, I'm teaching one of the classes down in San Antonio or something. There's 50-something guys there, and they're taking classes. And somehow I always got to talk a little bit about slot cars to the guys, you know. And this guy comes up to me, he looked like he was 90 years old, and he turned out to be about 7 years younger than me at the time. And I said, man, Bobby, you're a lot of bad booze and bad women. I said, yeah, you need to cut that stuff out. But anyway, he says, when I was a kid, Mom and Dad got us a slot car set. But my dad was in the Army, and we kept moving. And by the time it would get to us, Dad's moving to another place. He says, we got it when we was like 13. We never got to play with them because we kept going to Germany and then here and there. And by the time we'd unboxed stuff, Mom's saying, box it back up. We got to move again. He says, I'm going to go to Mom's house. If those slot cars are still in the attic, I'll send them to you. So about 2 months later, I get this little package in the mail. There's 4 of these lined up. And he didn't spend no money on packaging. I can't believe they didn't get broke. But they were these little cars made in the 60s. This is a 55 Chevy, but anyway, the Corvette. And he says, thank you for helping me on teaching me about asphalt where I could pass my class and all that. You can have these. And I almost started crying. And they're so old, I wouldn't open them for a long time. But even the foam down inside is just deteriorated. And the bottom copper is all turned green and stuff. But I leave them just like it is because they only get this way once, right? So my neighbor had to have one of them. Oh, he just begged me because he used to have a car like that. And so I traded him one for something. And then I've got the other 2. And then another one went to another friend of mine. And he's kept it just like this on his shelf in his living room. It's like valuable to him. This is a car I told Susan a while ago. I said, hold out your hand. She did. I said, that's $380. And what's unique about this is everybody gave me parts to build this car correctly. And I didn't have to spend nothing on it. The only thing that's not original is the little body. And I got one that looks just like it and painted it just like it. But it was an attempt back in '68 to build a car that would really fly around the track. And it did not work. Now, for years, I didn't have the motor that goes in it. And they're a couple $100 on eBay. So about 5 years ago, this guy gave me a track over in Bedford. And we go to get it. And he says, why don't you just take that little box of parts? I'm not going to use it. Dad's gone now. You can have the track. And so I loaded up. And about a year ago, I looked down in those box of parts and I spotted that high-dollar armature was in that junk. And I got it out of there, and I felt like I was a thief. Look what I got. I can't believe. They're called quadrilams, and they are fast. And I cleaned it all up, put it in there, and it worked. So, quadrilam. It's what it is. It's 4 sandwiches laminated together to make the motor faster. Quadrilam is what they call it. So that's an interesting story about that. They're very rare, very hard to find. I told Debbie, if anything happens to me, honey, don't just give this stuff away. My buddies need to come over and own up on it. Back to the Future. It's kind of neat. They built a Back to the Future car, and it's just to kind of look like one and kind of neat. It's all out. But this company made this. You can go buy this right now, $19 if you can find them. The NASCAR guys that race, one of the racers is named Joey Logano. And he actually autographed the hood of my car here one time. He used to drive the Home Depot car. My daughter works at Home Depot and says, Dad, you got to get up here. It's been about 10 years ago. Joey Logano is going to be here in Mesquite. You can bring your cars up and he can autograph them. And I got to talk to him right there. But You can't even hardly see his name, and you couldn't even read it if you, he's left-handed. Can you see the black on the hood a little bit? So, but I got an autographed car. It's pretty neat right there on the hood. And then he went to drive the Pennzoil car now, but he was fascinated with my slot cars. I said, man, I got a big track at my house. Come on over. And you can give it to her. Now, one more that's pretty, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of Jim Hall, lives in Midland, Texas. Jim Hall's 88 years old. And he raced these, what they were called Can-Am type cars back in the 60s. And so I was all excited. I told Debbie, I said, man, I'm going to Midland to speak all week, you know, teach classes. And I'm going to find Jim Hall's shop. So I talked to somebody, said, yeah, it's about 5 miles south of Midland, out there in the middle of nowhere. And boy, he was right. And this little compound's there, all fenced up. Jim Hall race called Chaparral Race Cars. And so I'm looking in the window at the pictures, and all of a sudden the door keys start rattling, and the door opens. He goes, I'm Jim Hall. Can I help you? And I look like Lucy Ball. It's really Jim Hall. What do you want? I'm trying to get out of here. I said, I just drove out here. I'm from Dallas. I'm teaching asphalt. I want to look through the pictures. And I said, I understand that you have a big racetrack behind this place out in the desert. He goes, I do. Come on. And I went, oh, I started shaking. He took me in his office, and there's a big picture, aerial view of the racetrack. It's called Rattlesnake Speedway. He built it in '57. His dad was a big oil man, so they had oil money, and he built this test track, 2 miles. And so his cars were better than anybody else's because he got to test them before he ever took them. Now, they won Indianapolis with Johnny Rutherford from Fort Worth back in '83, '4, '5, somewhere in there. Those cars are on display. So if you go to the Petroleum Museum out on I-20 there in Midland, they have a whole wing dedicated to Jim Hall, and all his cars are in there. And he autographed the wing on my car. So this little car becomes priceless. Jim Hall. And I put tape over it so nobody would rub it off, you can see. But anyway, this was one of his cars he designed. And I said, Jim, will you sign my car? And I pulled this one out of my car, and I said, this is my favorite. And he looked at me and said, that was my favorite too. And he let me sit in the real car. I didn't fit real well, but he let me sit in. Jim's not a very big guy. So I got a couple autographed cars. It was pretty neat. I got a couple of gold cars. These were actually made in '71, and they are brand new. And I lucked out and found these. Now, they didn't have chassis, but I put chassis together that mimicked, or probably exactly what came underneath them. But these are actually a gold plastic plated. They're probably $75 a piece. I think I picked both of them up for 20 bucks. Sunday mornings are a good time to look on eBay because not a lot of people up, because not everybody goes to church like we do, right? And I'll get up early in the morning sometimes, and you'll find stuff on eBay that you can pick up because there's nobody else bidding on them. So those are pretty neat, little Can-Am cars that are fun. I've got a couple of Richard Petty little T-Jet cars. This one says 150 on the bottom. That one says 125. And these were cast resin. So the guy took a die-cast car, made a shell off of it, and he poured the resin in these and made the Richard Petty cars. He made the windshields. One of them's red, one of them's clear, and put them in there. And so I've always, these are some of those that gentleman passed away. His wife left the cars to us. And I happened to go up there. Everybody's picking what they want. There's about 12 of us picking stuff. And I said, I want those two, just to keep them together. So they're quite original looking. Back when he ran his cars back in the 60s. So I'm kind of proud of those. It's kind of a good collection. Let's see what else. I've got the Batmobile, which was kind of neat, made back off TV show. And a neat story about this one, these are quite expensive on eBay, a couple of $100 to $300 when you can find them. And about, how long ago, 10 years ago, I was in Corpus Christi, and I was watching the show American Pickers. I'm almost finished. I was watching the show American Pickers, and they were in Houston at this guy's house, and his name was Bernard Sampson. And he had motorcycles and radios and robots. And upstairs, he's got this huge room with nothing but slot cars in them. And I'm going crazy. I called Debbie. I said, you ain't going to believe this. Da, da, da. I started looking on the internet, and I found him. I emailed him, and he invited me over the next day because I'm going from Corpus up to Houston. I spent 12 hours at his house looking at slot cars. And he would say, this is the only one in the world. Now, he has over 1,000 sets in the boxes. Almost mint. Now, you know what a little slot car set looked like at Toys R Us or whatever? He has over 5,000 to 7,000 cars. Some of them are big. He'll look at me and he'll say, now, you're the only person that's ever held this, Larry. And I'm going, you know, and he says, I gave $10,000 for that car. He owned his own Harley Davidson dealership. He spent about $4,000 a month on slot cars. It won't hurt it. I can put it back together. But he used to date, what was the lady on the Popeye movie? Way back when Robin Williams, man, I went blank. She played in The Shining. She played Olive Oyl on the Popeye. Anyway, that was his girlfriend and wife, I think, for one. Said, she left me for Ringo Starr of the Beatles. You know, I thought it was funny. And so he's a very nice guy. His wife is full-blood Chinese. Mimi, she's so neat. They live in a warehouse, and the whole second floor, it looks like a rooms to go for Chinese wooden antique furniture. So I've been to his house 4 times, and we get to go again Sunday. So we're going down to Houston on Saturday to our niece's engagement party. So we're going to spend the night. And so Bernard's all excited. I'm going to get to come see him again. And you can even look him up on YouTube. He's got a whole deal where he has 50 glass shelves, cabinets that lock with lights all in there. And just unbelievable. And I always take him something. And he always gives me something back that's worth, and he gave me that Batmobile. I said, Bernard, that's out of your collection. I can give away what I want to. And he's the best host. He's the most gentleman type person I think I've ever met, you know. So, but he's got every transistor radio I've ever seen in there's 42 of those shelves, wooden shelves, full of transistor radios. So he's just a collector extraordinaire and quite interesting. But what I want to talk about, slot cars were a pain in the rear for a while because the rails and the contacts would get dirty. And that's the little contacts on the bottom where you see the little copper pieces where the rails. So we would take a pencil eraser, or some guys would take a little piece of sandpaper. Well, they come out with Dremel tools. And we buy these little pinwheel looking cleaners, and you put them on there and you go zip, 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 and they're clean. You set them on the track and they go. So this thing changed because you get them all dirty, carboned up, and they would quit running. And I can't clean them. Oh, little kids would start crying. Mom and Dad, put it back, put it up. I'm not going to hear you cry. This did it. So one of my friends kind of thought about this, and I kind of took it to another level, and I found these pinwheel cleaners. Now everybody's got them. It's all over the internet, having a good time. Real quickly, just a few more things, and then I'll shut off. These are some of the cars that I have modified. Everybody is giving me something. This is a Slot Tech car. They're about $200. And a guy gave me this one. He said it won't run. I figured out why. I got it running, and it is perfectly in mint shape, just like it was when it came from the factory. This green one, I call it the gnat because it's so fast. Zip, 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 zip. You're like a gnat. And it's got all kinds of good stuff on it. And believe it or not, I built this one like 20 years ago, and somebody gave me, here's some good magnets, Larry. Here's some good crown gears, and I know y'all don't know all that stuff. Here's a good motor. And so I put that one together, and it is fast, fast, fast. And this is the record breaker right here. This is one I found on eBay one Sunday morning for $10. I think it was $5 shipping. And this is the record holder right here, 2.8 seconds. It is just, nobody knew what it was, I guess, when they looked on there. And I happened to notice what the magnets looked like. And I said, I'm going to get that. And when people come over, I show them that car. Because it just flies around the track. It's just, you just can't believe how fast it is. It's almost uncontrollable. Well, anyway, I know that's an hour right there. There's the other Corvette, the two the guys sent me out of the 4. I've got some more here. Here's one I got the other day. Debbie let me buy this one. I think I paid $80 for this one. And it is just unbelievably fast. Not as fast as the record one, but it's more of a stock type. The guy just builds these with factory parts. Where these, you have to buy or get the modified parts to make them work right, and then you start tuning them, and you can take them from one level and go to another. So y'all are welcome to come up and look at any of these. I just brought a few because, like I said, 1,900 cars. Susan got about 1/10 of them, and we had some people from church come over, the Jollies. Y'all know the Jollies. And we raced all one Saturday. I said, y'all can look through any of the boxes you want to. So, what's her name? Kay. She was just looking through cars. Well, when they left, 7 or 8 hours later, which was really nice, there was stuff just laying everywhere. Just cars everywhere. So Sunday morning I came to church and I said, all right, y'all up against the wall. I'm missing about 10 cars. I'm going to pat y'all down. And everybody got a big laugh out of that. But I've never had anything stolen. I've had many, many people at the house. Y'all are welcome to come out anytime you want to. I brought Susan some little pieces of paper, kind of like business cards where it's got my name and stuff, and you can hand those out if anybody ever asks about stuff. But I think what's funny about all of it is I've been doing this pretty religiously for 30 years. We've got a pretty good group here called Thor Texas HO Racing. You can find it on Facebook. And my daughters, my son-in-laws, and my wife and all that rarely ever pull a trigger. Debbie, maybe in those many years, maybe 10 times. One son-in-law had named Mess, and he's a car guy. I'm a car guy. But there's no way I could have big cars like I have here. And these are quite detailed. They're quite fun. But like I said, most of the stuff's been given to me. I've been really fortunate. You treat people like you want to be treated and be nice to them, and it'll come back. Not that you're looking for it. But that one track I've got, I've been asking the guy for years, you going to sell that track? Yeah, I want $1,000. I'm not going to give you $1,000. And that's the one about 5 years ago where his stepson called me and said, Mark's dead. He's passed away. If you want the track, you can come get it. We had to dig it out of his garage. It took 3.5 hours to get it out of his garage. Everything had fell on it. But it was built in 1964. It was in a hobby shop over in Oak Cliff for a long time. And it went to several people. And now I have it and I'm rebuilding it. It's almost like rebuilding an old Model T. I've got it in there and I've been working on it little by little, trying to get it back together. And I'm on the last stage of getting it together. And everybody wants to come around. There's even a guy in Germany that's watching me on Facebook to see when I'm going to get the action track finished, So it's fun stories. If you do it long enough, it's a good time. Well, I thank y'all. Yes, you got questions?
Yes. Your chassis that you passed around that had no car on it.
Right.
Did you say you put it on the track and
Yeah.
ran it?
Yes.
So you can run the chassis without that.
Yeah, you can see how strong the magnets are. Oh.
That's what I was trying to understand.
Yeah, you can run these around without the bodies on them. A lot of people will test them like this.
That was confusing.
I'm sorry.
Because you said that, I thought, I had to have heard him wrong.
Yeah.
But it does.
Oh, there's people that make the back tires. There's people that make the front tires. There's people that just make motors.
So you just tried it out
You try it out, and then when you get it like I want to, you can put a body on it if you want to, yeah. A lot of times I call these trader queens because we usually just play with them a little bit and just put them on the shelf for people to look at, you know. This one gets so hot, I have to be careful with the kids. They don't burn their finger. Yes?
I've now enjoyed the whole thing.
Thank you, thank you.
I have 2 questions.
All right.
First question is, do you guys race for money? I mean, is there a
No. There's never been any alcoholic beverages, and there's never been any gambling in my place whatsoever.
What I mean by racing for money, like having, like they do in the NASCAR. You know,
If you go to they have a big event up in Pennsylvania, HOPRA, HO, Professional Racing Organization, whatever it is. And every June, they rent a big hotel and bring the tracks in, and they do actually have cash prizes. But basically, there used to be a little place in Plano for a few years. We'd go up there and race on Thursday nights, and he'd give you what you call a win slip. So, okay, first gets a $5 win slip, second gets $3, $2, and then you had to take that and spend it at the place. So if he give you a $3 win slip and you bought $3 worth of stuff, he only paid probably $1.25 for all that, right? Because he's got a markup. And so that's kind of how they did that. I was looking through my stuff the other day, and I still got some win slips that I never cashed in from 25 years ago, you know, but that's kind of how they did it.
and my second question is on these tracks, to help keep the cars on the tracks, do you guys build banks like they do in actual racing?
You can, but they really don't work. Because there's no suspension on a slot car like an automobile, so there's no ground effects. It's the magnet effect. So really, I can go just as fast around the flat track as I can a banked one, you know. We did build a bank track one time, and the guy up at the top had the advantage because there was a guardrail there, and he could run the guardrail around. So we took the guardrails off. He started flying off as much as everybody else. So the bank tracks draw people when they first see them. Oh, I want to go to that track. And then when they start racing them after a while, it's not that much fun. So we just don't do bank tracks. And for many, many years, everything had to be flat. There was no tunnels or over. And now this guy from California, if you go online, you can look up Brad Bowman or Brad's Tracks, and you can go down there and find the Roval, and it'll have my name out there. I think it still says Larry Welch, Forney, Texas, but he's built, I don't know, a couple of hundred tracks, and that's all he does. He's got a CNC machine. He sets that big piece of, it's about this thick, PVC, it's gray. He'll put it in there, set his track layout on the computer, and then it'll just cut all night long. When he used to do it by hand. So my track was built by hand back in the day. So he's...
There's a gentleman here in town, his name is Gabe Medina, and he's built 2 CNC machines.
Oh, wow.
So, and he's got 6 3D printers, and that's what he used to build
Yes.
CNC machines.
Now there's guys making bodies now for these cars with 3D printers. They'll scan them, and they're selling all over eBay now, about $12 a piece. They're all white. You got to paint them, and they're a little hard to paint because that plastic it does weird stuff sometimes. I don't think I have one of those, no. But you can just let your imagination go crazy with this stuff. Now, not to pat myself on the back, I'm probably the premier builder. I know how to work on all 28 different manufacturers. Where some of my buddies, they just want to mess with T-jets, the little bitty non-magnet ones. And this guy can do that. And Debbie knows a couple of my friends, they've never taken a car apart. Sometimes I'll just sit in my shop at night just cleaning all the shoes so they look brand new. And my buddy, he'll put that junky old car on my track and beat us every time. But he's good at it. We used to race, I think we raced 47 straight Saturday nights years ago when I first started doing this. And one night I won. We keep little points. And we raced till 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes. And I had to come in and wake Debbie up in a dead sleep. Hey, I won tonight. But we've probably been together 500 times, and I've only won twice. But I think I probably got a little ADHD or whatever, MOUSE, whatever it is, and I don't concentrate well all the time. And those guys can. They're just amazing. I'm getting better. But most all of these cars have had my hand on them in some place or another. All of them, you go to my boxes, all of them look pretty much like brand new. And some of them have been run and run, but I just take care of them, you know. My brother never took care of nothing. I still got all my cars and stuff when I was 5 years old, and toys, you know, so I just take care of stuff and appreciate what people give me, or grandparents, you know, and all that stuff over the years. You just want to take care of it, and you have a good time as you get older. And, you know, I don't spend any budget money, any household money on this stuff. It just kind of self-takes care. And so what I'm hoping is I can start building cars here in a few years and start selling them on eBay, you know, and just get you know, $2,000 or $3,000 a month coming in just on this stuff, repairing cars. I'm not a real good painter, but I'm getting better at it. But I'm too impatient for painting. Debbie gets mad at me. She sees me with a brush in my hand in the house, she'll darn near get the gun out to shoot me now. But anyway, I've talked long enough. I'll stay here as long as y'all want me to answer questions, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's been fun.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Let's see, coming up, we've got our motorcycle event is this Saturday. Audie Day is May 27th. And then next month's LBS, Ron Robinson will be here and he'll be talking about Vicksburg. Thank you all for coming.
This video has been brought to you by GEUS. GEUS is your community-owned provider for electric, internet, cable TV, and true local programming.